I am procrastinating because I told myself I would edit a book, and the book's supposed to I kind of announced that it would come out in February, and I wrote it. Well, I worked on it. It's kind of a compilation, so it's got a lot of old stuff in it. Um, I I don't want to say half old, half new because I don't know if that's accurate, but maybe a little more old than new. It's weird because some of it, like one book I wrote, I worked on since 2018, but a lot of the stuff was written in 2024. So does that make it old or new? But I put that together in a week in early September, and then my life went to hell, and I couldn't do anything other than just get by and just jump through hoops and deal with baloney. In that meantime, and now stuff's pretty cool, but I just don't care because I don't relate to the person that wrote that book anymore. I don't care about the book, to be quite honest. I mean, I'm not saying it sucks or I hate it. I think I'll actually enjoy it rereading it. But basically, as I work on a new book, as I do new stuff that I'm excited about, uh, do I really care about this old thing? It's old stuff. It's not exciting anymore. It's not fresh. It's like you're in the middle of playing a video game that you just bought, and it's like, okay, now let's take this disc out and we'll play the game you've played 100 times before last year. And I always compare it to when you're writing one book and you're editing or promoting your last book. It's basically like you're seeing someone new, but then you have to go and have a conversation with or about your ex. It's uncomfortable. But that's a fault of my creative process. But then that's why I'm doing this video. I wouldn't expect actual Bookbro content or any kind of content on here anymore, other than maybe a book reading in February, because I joined a writing group the past year, and I really liked it, and it was cool. And then life just would not allow me to have that, and it hit me during that time that I was just unable to do anything creative. Or anything at all, really, recreationally, that I'm just on my own path with writing. I don't relate to other writers. I don't know if I belong in a writing group, and I love that, and I wish that I could. I desperately want to relate to other writers and readers, and I don't 99% of the time. It's like a unicorn if I meet someone interested in books that I have any kind of common ground with, honestly. It's a very strange phenomenon. But reading's so diverse that it's like there's people all different kinds of interests and genres or time periods they enjoy, that it makes sense. And I'm kind of specific and weird as a person and as a reader, and especially as a writer. So that's pretty logical. Anyhow, I just thought that I would share a list of things that I read recently that I'm pretty excited about, and things that I hope to read this year since it's a new year. And some stuff I failed to read, which is, that's just a part of the game. Anyhow, so the first one here's the most recent book that I read. I believe I'm going to pronounce it wrong. I'm going to embarrass myself. Absalom by William Faulkner. I just got to point out this picture of him in the back. That is my bookmark, a Sports Clips gift card a friend got me. But yeah, he's just looking fresh. I just had to point out that he's looking good there. But most challenging book I've read in a long time. I struggled with it. I read the entire last 150 pages in a day, and then I got the swing of it. But I'd read 20 pages, 50 pages, and I was winded. I just it exhausted me. And it's not just a long book, but the syntax, the structure, the paragraphs. I mean, I've lose track of what I was reading. It's truly mechanically heavy lifting as a reader, and I really appreciate that. And I think it's a great book, and I think the story's remarkable. Honestly, I'm wondering, having finished it, if it might be his best book. Does that mean I had fun reading it? Fuck no. It was a challenge, and I love that. I love when a game challenges me, even though I suck at video games. I like exercising and that feeling of you reach a new max, or you run further than you ever ran or something. And reading's the same way. So I really appreciate the book. I did not necessarily enjoy it, but I do love it, and I think that with time I'll enjoy it. Because a lot of my favorite books, the first time I read them, I didn't enjoy them. A lot of movies I don't like the first time I watch. I shouldn't say I don't like them, but I don't enjoy as much. Half the time I'm figuring the movie out. Where's this going? What's this? Okay, and I'm always dubious. Is this wasting my time? Is this going anywhere? And then once It finishes like, I like that, and then I reflect on that, I rewatch it, then I love it the second time. And I think that Absalom is a book very, very much like that, and I think it's very much a book that I will reread. But in terms of a first encounter, it put me through the ringer, and that's really cool. I respect that. Next up is The Sound and the Fury, which just a great book. I just think it's amazing. I don't have anything more to say. I'm shocked. I started reading Joyce Faulkner because everybody was talking about him this past year, and I love Barn Burning. It's one of those influential short stories for my own writing, and Tom Joad is a character. I think I've referenced my own writing a lot. Kind of an obsession of sorts. Really struck me, but I didn't know if I'd love like the Southern Gothic style. But then the modernism took me back to writers I love, like Joyce, which I did a whole thing with comparisons of them earlier on in the year. But I mean, he's really rising up to my list of favorite authors of all time. I mean, absolutely impressed. I didn't think he would suck. I didn't know if I would be thinking like, was Herman Melville, was he the best American author, or was William Faulkner? And yeah, I mean, I'm not smart enough or educated enough to weigh in on that, but just it's one of those things you hear the hype and you're always like, the hype's not always real, and then you actually like try it out and you're like, oh no, the hype was absolutely on point. So next up on that theme is As I Lay Dying. That's probably your best bet for starting out. It's much more straightforward while also conveying his themes and style. Again, just an A-plus book. I mean, that's all I can say with all three books, but I'd say As I Lay Dying, Sound and Fury, and then Absalom in terms of difficulty, at least from my reading experience. I thought Sound of the Fury is fairly straightforward, honestly. There's a little bit of like iffiness, but it wasn't anything that really lasted with the confusion. And then this is one I've read before, but I reread somewhat often, actually, and my relationship with this writer has changed so much in the past year, especially. T.S. Eliot. I used to be kind of a hater. I used to think he was kind of like not that exciting as a modernist, which I know is like heresy and blasphemy. And because of that, I regularly listen to things like music that I don't like. I regularly look up analysis of art that I don't necessarily like, or movies I don't necessarily like, or in this case, writers. I wish I could remember his name now, because I am just in love with his lectures. I'll have to find him and link him when I post this. But he did a lecture on T.S. Eliot, specifically The Wasteland, that is just brilliant and gave me such a newfound appreciation for it. Even though I'd read The Wasteland like 3 or 4 times, and the first time I was like, it's okay. And then the next time I read it, I was in college then, I think a sophomore, and I reread it a couple times after, and I kind of liked it less each time I read it. And then his lecture on just changed my opinion of it. And again, all of his lectures are great, and I'll link him below. But I can't remember, 4 quartets. I was going to say 4 seasons, like the Stephen King book, which I also remember enjoying, but completely different kind of thing. Yeah, I always liked that one. So I reread it because it was on my mind. And I bought this book the same trip to Barnes & Noble. And this one really influenced the book that I'm going to be editing today. Shockingly so. Tarantula by Bob Dylan, which a lot of people say he just love the design, the cover. I'm a nerd for this stuff, but I thought it was hysterical. I thought it was really fun to read. A lot of people say he was strung on drugs. He just did it to fulfill the contract. I don't know. I love Bob Dylan's writing. Is a lyricist or poet or whatever you want to say with his songs, a songwriter. And I found a lot of that humor and irreverence and absurdism that I love from his songs in that book. My favorite Bob Dylan song is A Ballad of a Thin Man. And, that's the stuff that I like. the long rambling stuff with historical pop culture figures like almost Andy Warholian, all intermingling in this weird narrative that he's spinning. It's like 10 minutes long. I mean, I love his beautiful songs too, and his more straightforward songs, a political song. I love pretty much all of it, at least during his golden and silver ages, and then of course his resurgence. I can't remember the name of his most recent album, unfortunately, which is very. That bothers me because I can picture the cover vividly. But yeah, big fan of Bob Dylan, and as a fan of pretty much anything that he does that I've listened to, there's probably a good decade or two I haven't heard much from. Really enjoyed the book, and it was a huge influence on my own writing, which is very unexpected. So shout out to that. This next one was recommended on another YouTube channel. I can't remember her name now. This shows how aloof I've been since September. Dakota Warren, I think. She does a lot of people think she's pretentious, and I suppose she is, but I really like that about her. I like to see pretentious writers, and I like that she has this French new wave kind of vibe, and I don't know. I really enjoy her stuff, and she's recommended a ton of books that I really enjoy. And this was no exception. I'm shocked that I didn't know it existed before. Nadia by Andre Breton, surrealist classic, and I read it in one sitting, probably in an hour. A joy to read. Really good book if you like surrealism. This next one, I'm embarrassed by the cover, but I'm also embarrassed I didn't finish it. Hardcore Literature, I think the dude's name is. They did a great video on this, and he recommended just reading one sentence a day, and I tried starting that. And I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to finish this book if I do it that way, is the issue, because it's a really, really long book, and I don't know how long the human life will be by the time I'm 70 or 80. But I have a feeling that I would have to be about 200 to read this sentence by sentence each day. And that is Proust's work, In Search of Lost Time. And again, I don't, that cover. But it's, of course, only volume 1. From what I read of it, and this was at a time where I was just studying a ton of stuff. I was going through a lot of Russian literature, a lot of poetry, stuff I wasn't as familiar with, trying to clear up those blind spots in my overview of literature. It possibly could wind up being my favorite book of all time. I'll put it that way. It's very possible from what I had read of it and what I had read about Proust. I just unfortunately was not in a place, and I'm still not in a place where I can just sit down and get through this monster of a book. Because the issue is, and I have this a lot with a lot of things, I love what I see in this book. And I know that if I continue reading it, I will become absolutely obsessed, and I would read like a volume a day. And I simply do not have the capacity or time to do that. And I know that I will miss sleep, and I will sacrifice my health if I get too obsessed. No, it probably won't be that severe, but it would be a wreck. I would absolutely start like cutting corners with sleep and stuff, or just like putting off responsibilities like cleaning if I got too obsessed with the book. And I want to be a tidy boy. This next one was another one I failed to read last year. I would do this one short story a week, Sherlock Holmes. I did not like The Hound of the Baskervilles at all when I read it. And I was in middle school. I wasn't even in high school when I read that for class. And I thought I would like Sherlock Holmes because I like Sherlock Holmes. And I thought it was the most boring, crappy, dry thing. And so I started this. The very first book in the volume, is it, I think it's listed here if I'm not mistaken, A Study in Scarlet. Yeah, and I like that the mystery was actually Watson discovering Sherlock Holmes. I thought was very interesting, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I just, again, life got crazy, and that's how it is sometimes. Sometimes, the first 6 months of the year, I had all the time in the world to read. The last 6 months of 2024, I hardly had an hour. So it was just a victim of that, and again, just stuff that I have, honestly, a more direct interest in. I'm interested in being interested in Sherlock Holmes. I want to read them, but it is a thing where I don't have a taste for it yet. It's not of my palate, and I think it could be. and I want to read every Sherlock Holmes book and story for academic purposes, but it's just simply not something I enjoy quite as much as some other things that I read. All right, so this next one here, I picked it up. I've read a lot of her stuff. I've watched a lot of analysis of her stuff. Obviously great. I want to read all of it. I think I should read all of it. And I got this book so I could do that. And other than flipping through it, I'm thinking for 2025, I want to read a poem a day. Maybe two. One when I wake up and one before bed. And then that's like 700 poems I'd never read before. I haven't begun yet, so I'll have to maybe put a day in of a backlog. But anyhow, this is so obvious and entry level, but the complete poems of Emily Dickinson. I got this version because I don't give a shit about it. Very modern printing. I saw a wonderful antique version, which I'm sure is not rare, in an antique shop, and I wanted it. And I told myself, you cannot buy this book, because if you buy this book, it's going to sit on your shelf and you will never open it because you're afraid that it's going to crumble to dust in your hands if you do. And you're going to be so afraid of like flipping the tissue paper pages that you will never read this. So I got a version intentionally that I will read, because I don't dislike. I'm happy I own it, but I don't necessarily respect it. It's not grandma, you know. It's just a modern printing. So this one here I flipped through as well. Actually a pretty big influence on the book that I'm working on currently. Not the same content necessarily. Right now I'm writing a lot about memory, and it's kind of a ghost story, but it's not as a horror story necessarily. It's inspired by horror stories, but it's more about memory, regret, generations of families, and leaving kind of how a physical location can be associated with an emotional context, which is a poor explanation and at worst pretentious. But anyhow, this is Japanese death poems. The issue with this, and from what I've read, it's very good and interesting. I just don't want to read about people dying. That's sad, and I don't want to read about that all day, because life is sad enough as it is. Why would I need to add sadness to that? But as you see, it's written by Zen monks and haiku poets on the verge of death, and there's a lot of beauty to it. There's a lot of grace and elegance, which I really appreciate. The haiku form is something I tried my hand at quite a bit this year and suck at, of course, because it's poetry and I suck at poetry, but it's cool. I like it. I just don't want to be bummed the fuck out, so I don't read it. But I'd like to read more of it, is what I'm getting at. This one here I've had for a long time. It is John Cusack's character's favorite movie, or favorite book in the movie High Fidelity. Cash, the autobiography of Johnny Cash. This is how much I paid for it, if you're curious. I hear it's great. I just never found the time to just sit down and read it. I'm sure it's not like a challenging read, but it looks kind of hefty. There's a lot of words for an autobiography. And again, I'm sure I could tear through it. But last year, for instance, I read 1,000 pages of War and Peace in one day. When I'm in a book, I'm in a book. And I just never had the time or the right place. It's weird how, like, when you have the time, the inspiration doesn't line up. And that's how it is. When I have the time to read the book, I don't have the inspiration. But I want to write a book. I've wanted to write a book. I don't know if I still do. Inspired a lot by country music. Not in a typical way that you would think, but just something kind of inspired by country music. And so I think that would be a cool book to read around that time. This next one I'm so excited about. This was another Dakota Warren recommendation. But then everybody I know has read this and loves it and says that she's a genius. And she's a modern writer. And so I'm really excited to find out. And I hope that's true. And I love this book cover so much that I'm happy I own it just as a work of art, rather than, even if I hate the text. That'll make it worse because I love the cover so much. But it's Outline by Rachel Cusk. I just love this picture. I love the font, the presentation, and I really, really adore this. The spine, I just, oh my, see, it's how it's got that transit kudos, but it's not listed on the front. I love stuff like that. Just that little detail that they could have put it on the front cover and it would have hurt anything. No, but the design is so much more clever to me. The fact that they do not have it on the front cover, and it's even on the back cover, doesn't hurt anything being there. But something about that being on the spine and not the front cover drives me insane. in a good way. Here's one that's embarrassing I haven't read yet, and hopefully I get to it soon. For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. I want to go through these writers, like these like great authors. It's just, and I have for a lot of it. Like I'm definitely like, you could tell I have a bachelor's degree in English and nothing more, but I just I want to pace it out. I don't want to read all of Hemingway in 1 year. I don't want to read all of F. Scott Fitzgerald in 1 year. I'm interested in their other writings, but I'm more into like one a year, one every other year. Even though you could reread, there's no harm in it. I worry a lot about having read everything, even though that's a completely irrational phobia, because I'm so far from having done that. And then if I read all these authors, I'll just find other ones to read. But I really, really enjoy everything that Hemingway's written that I've read. So I want to savor that. For instance, my favorite, Clive Barker, I've read everything but like one book that he's released. And that's awesome. But it's also kind of sad. And for these authors that are already dead, I just, I like knowing there's always more to learn. Next up here on the list of great authors who have influenced me tremendously is Nabokov's Penin, I believe it's pronounced. Got this one a long time ago and just never got around to it. I don't know. It's a short book. It's pretty lame of me. This one here, it's very, very relevant to the book I'm writing now. It's actually kind of insane how relevant it is. And I love this author, but I took a course on her in college that I'm not saying it was a bad class. I'm not blaming the teacher. But when you're working as much as I was and you're taking 6 400 level classes and you're basically reading like a book a week, you have to cut corners. And I don't remember which ones I read. I don't remember which ones I started. I don't remember which ones I spark noted, which I hate to do because I genuinely wanted to read everything for this class. I had a natural interest in it. I simply could not. I was already only sleeping like 3 hours a night just to do the bare minimum. So anyhow, this is a book that I'm sure I will enjoy, and I enjoy the memories of hearing about it, but I'm almost certain I've never read it. Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Yeah, I just it's funny how something like that, where I'm not, that time of my life such a blur. I don't even remember everything I read and didn't read, but it's such an influence on my writing and the themes of it, and the humor. I'm sure I'll really enjoy it. But I didn't realize this was an actual Picasso here on the cover, which is really cool because I obviously love him. So that's really neat, and that shows what a fraud I am as an art fan as well as a reader, which is a pretty good note to end on. But what I will say, my next read that I have planned, and I think it's coming Wednesday, is A Movable Feast by Hemingway, speaking of Ernie. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that. I was at Barnes & Noble and I went to fiction, it wasn't there, and it's like, because the book's kind of popping off. It's having a resurgence, I think. I'm sure it was probably popular in its time, but a resurgence in popularity. Probably on TikTok or something, I don't know. And I was looking at fiction, wasn't there. I thought, wow, it's kind of non-fiction. So I'll just ask just to make sure. I'm sure they don't have it. And the person working there, she was like, oh my gosh, that's such a good book. You have to read it. But now we're out. So I just got it on Amazon. No big deal. So that's going to be the first book that I read this year. Well, I finished Absalom, but that's a carryover from last year. The first book fresh I'm going to read this year, I guess, is my own. And then A Movable Feast, because I have to edit my own dang book today, which, I mean, that I chose to do it. I can't complain, but it's not the most exciting read, I assure you.